religiously. My name is Lauren, and today we are going to be diving into the Charlie Kirk debate at Cambridge University. This recent debate was pretty charged politically, emotionally, and religiously. Charlie Kirk comes from a Christian background and is a political and social commentator that is based out of the US. He does a lot of campus debating, which is what he's best known for, and he's done debates with liberals like Dean Withers and other people. Today's goal isn't really to debate the politics behind all of this, but rather to talk about where Charlie is coming from as an evangelical Christian and respond to some of the blatantly false claims that he's made about womanhood in this video and feminism as a whole. I think that this is a really good video because it does show the United States point of view, the Christian evangelical mainstream point of view on these types of topics. It's a really good way for us to go through it and start a discussion about what these opinions are. I've made some other videos that I think would be helpful if you're interested in understanding more where I'm coming from. One of them is my video on Christian nationalism. I don't know if I would say that Charlie Kirk is a Christian nationalist. I would probably need to do a little bit more digging on him. But I think that that video would give you a really good background on why the types of things that he's saying is problematic and where it's sending us, what direction this rhetoric is actually pointing us in. That is a great video to go check out. I definitely would recommend going and watching that so that you can get up to speed if you're not familiar with that. Another video that's unrelated but could be also interesting is my video on Jordan Peterson and how he has used Christianity, it seems, to manipulate an audience when he himself is not a Christian. I think that there are parallels here where Charlie Kirk is using certain lines of thinking because it's popular and because he wants to manipulate an audience, not necessarily because he truly believes that himself. Now, if you've been here before and you're surprised to see me with bangs, so was my fiance when he came home from work the other day. I started deciding to trim my hair myself because the haircutting prices are just really high where I'm at right now and I just don't want to pay it. I got a little bit carried away with my bangs and then I had to just kind of fully commit. My fiance will not tell me. He's the ultimate hype man. He tells me, yeah, that I look great no matter what. So he's not going to be honest if I look bad. So I debated whether or not, I cut them to be styled like that. I cut them to go in with my hair or to be kind of out too. So I'm not like full committal, so if you guys are like, girl, no, it's ugly, you can indeed just say that, and I'm not like stuck with, you know what I mean, whatever. I cut it myself, you guys get the point. You're surprised, so is he, so am I, and yeah, I don't know, I guess we're gonna go with it now. I don't know, I've never had bangs before. I look like my mother, which is a good thing. In this video, we're going to be jumping around a little bit because the questions that Charlie gets asked are jumping around a little bit. So we'll be covering a couple different topics. It won't be the full video. Feel free, obviously, to go watch that video in full if you're interested in seeing the full thing. And yeah, let me know in the comments below if you guys agree with my viewpoints on this, if you have different opinions, or what you thought of the debate in general.
Settle down, please. We're going to move on to our questions. Our first question is from Zinaisha Zubair from Sydney, Sussex.
I have quite a simple question for you. Now, I know you've debated Dean Withers on Jubilee before. I was wondering why you now refuse to engage with further debate with him.
Wait, hold on. First of all, he's coming on my show this summer, and let me get this straight. I flew 5,000 miles across the world to have you ask why I'm not going to debate a left-wing YouTuber.
This is something that Charlie Kirk and Jordan Peterson both do. If they don't like a line of questioning, they will act like they're personally, morally outraged. Like, I can't believe that you would ask me a question like this. I'm so above being asked a question like this. I think that even if he didn't like the first question, just to open things on a positive note and start things out well, he would try to engage positively with them and constructively, but instead he starts out the debate by putting down this young woman and trying to elevate himself. It's a really bad look, and it's maybe a tactic that would work in the States, but it clearly is not working here. There's also been a lot of videos of Dean Withers going up to Charlie Kirk at his debates on college campuses in the United States and trying to get his attention and begging him to debate with him.
It's a very move on your part to keep avoiding Dean.
Then debate me.
People like you.
Let me on the mic. Let me on the mic.
Get Dean on the mic. That's the whole reason I came up here.
Thank you.
Move for you to keep avoiding him.
This was Dean's whole plan. I'm going to bring these people here. Woo!
We've been told by every single one of Kirk's staffers that he doesn't want to talk to us. I have some disagreeing questions. Do you think I could ask him?
Well, that's something you're going to have to talk to somebody else about.
The reason we weren't let in line is because we don't go to college. But apparently neither does a guy on the mic. We're in MAGA territory now. We need to be very respectful.
Hey, Charlie, Dean's here. Dean.
Oh, okay.
Come on.
You have a permit?
We should talk. I'm trying to talk to Charlie Kirk, but it's not working. Do you think me and Kirk should have a conversation?
100%.
You got to get me up there, man.
We may be purposely ignoring you.
This has proven to be very difficult.
I think that we are in the free marketplace of ideas. Anyone should be able to come up here and challenge and debate. If you're really for that, as you say you would allow someone to come up here and debate you on that.
So this question isn't really out of line. It's what is out there right now. It's being put out there by Dean. Charlie hasn't really done anything to correct it except for act holier than thou and as if he's above his time being spent with Dean. Appreciate that he clarifies here that, yeah, Dean is on the schedule and he just doesn't appreciate Dean ambushing him at college campuses. That could be valid. I could imagine that if I started doing meet and greets, which completely hypothetically, obviously, but if I did a meet and greet and then other people came to just try to like create their own content and monopolize on something that I had created to invest in my own community. But this question isn't out of line. We don't know what Charlie Kirk's inner thoughts are. We don't know his relationship with Dean Withers, and we don't know his relationship with Dean Withers, and we don't know his upcoming schedule. The fact that he's just mocking her is pointless and short-sighted. I keep harping on this in videos, you guys, and I'm going to keep harping on it, but part of the reason that the public perception of Christianity has gone down the drain over the last 5 years is because of the media exposure from people claiming to be Christians like Charlie Kirk or like Jordan Peterson. These types of people don't at all embody what the scripture says, and I'll take it upon myself because I know from back when I was religious, it's in the Bible, you're not supposed to really speculate on other people's faith. But the Bible does say, how will you know other believers? Well, you'll know them by their fruit. And the fruit of the Spirit, which is, these are the character qualities that you'll exhibit if you have a relationship with God, are love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control.
Their fruits, you shall know them. Not by how many scriptures we post, not by how on fire we sound in prayer meetings, not by their titles, not by how well they preach, not by how loud they pray. We live in a generation that claps for gifts, but ignores character. She can sing, but is she kind? He can play instruments, but does he love? They can prophesy, but can they forgive? Don't be fooled. The power can flow through dirty vessels, but fruit only grows from a surrendered life. You can serve in church and still be bitter. You can sing in the choir and still curse under your breath. You can preach and still not know him. You can lay hands on the sick and still have hatred in your heart. You can speak in tongues and still speak death over others.
So when I'm asking myself in these videos, is this person a Christian? Are they actually a Christian? Are they actually someone who is serving God and is pursuing that actively? Now, I'm not trying to do a no true Scotsman fallacy where I'm just saying if you act badly, you're not a real Christian. Whenever I am assessing for this, I do look at these character qualities. It's very clear when someone is not really following the religion they're in. I'm sure all of you can think of Christians on Facebook who really are just hateful and awful. Maybe they are real Christians, but they're not really following the Bible. I think that is something that's happening here with Charlie Kirk. He's going straight to personal insults and attacks and putting himself on a pedestal. That is against the Bible inherently. And if they are truly followers of Christ, they would believe that the platforms that is given to them by God, those platforms are tools for them to represent Jesus and to be a light to the world. If not by blatantly saying it, through their behavior, through their actions, through their love. No, none of that matters here because he just starts out with attacks.
Well, I mean, he continuously tries to get your attention at your campus.
Yeah, right. Yeah, again,
you just ignore him.
I've debated him twice in the last calendar year. He's coming on my show this summer. Let me be clear. I came to Cambridge to have you ask me that.
I mean, you talk about freedom, and I'm just using my freedom of speech to ask you a simple question.
Like, genuinely, what does he want her to do? Does he want her to say, "I'm sorry, Charlie. I should have been more prepared to speak to you. I should have thought up a question that you would have really appreciated instead of asking the one that I actually wanted to ask and you obviously didn't like." What does he actually want her to say by, what, is this the third time now that he's said this? It really is strange, and it is clear that when Charlie goes and debates on campuses, he's debating early college students who have yet to really learn about the world. And this isn't the fault of the students. It's not that they're unintelligent, but they're just uneducated in some of these clips, and that's just the reality. These students in Cambridge are not uneducated. They know what's going on in the world, and they're able to respond to him quickly, and it seems like immediately the pressure gets to him.
You seem to be dodging it for some reason.
No, I've debated him twice in the last year, and he's coming on this summer for a long-form discussion. But is this what I can expect?
Yeah, he's making videos about you avoiding him on your campus debates.
Right. So let me tell you how this works. I do a campus event, like at Texas A&M University. I rent it out. I'm there for 3 hours. He shows up demanding to come up to the mic immediately, cutting in line of other students. It's not Joe Biden's America anymore where you can just cut in line and get whatever you want. So therefore, I say, "Excuse me, Dean, we'll talk at another time." He makes this YouTube video as if I'm scared to debate him, even though I debated him twice in the last year. Does that sufficiently answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
From back when I was a Christian, I got this tattoo, and don't come at me, Bible scholars, saying that I took this out of context, because yes, it is a little bit out of context. But 1 Timothy 1:15, it says, "This is a trustworthy saying which deserves full acceptance from all believers. Jesus Christ came to save the sinners, of whom I am the worst." In this verse, it's taken to be about humility, that if you are going to be a Christ follower, you should assume yourself to be the worst. You should always be coming from a place of humility as the worst sinner that God has forgiven. I'm the worst, God has forgiven me, and I need to love other people wholly because there's no one that is worse than I am. I've already sinned. There's no one that I am better than. I got this Bible verse as I was deconstructing, and I remember really thinking, or a friend asked me even, she was like, "Are you sure you want to get this? Like, what if you're not a Christian?" And I remember saying, well, even if I leave the church, faith has really been a big part of my life, so I don't think I'll ever regret getting this tattoo. To me at the time, it was partially about humility. It was partially about my own feelings of this cycle of not being good enough in the church and this shame cycle. Interesting that Charlie takes this attitude or standpoint, because as a Christian, that's the viewpoint you should be coming from. You should be thinking about, how can I serve other people? How could I educate other people? How could I love other people? If Charlie believes that he's telling the truth and spreading the truth, the way to do that would be to politely educate, like the students are doing to him.
I know you get asked about it a lot, but I want to hear it from you. Your opinion is on abortion.
Life begins at conception.
But about abortion specifically, why do you think abortion's wrong specifically?
Well, you agree murder is wrong?
I agree. Okay, so this is where we get to the question, right? Because what is it about murder you say is wrong? Like, why is murder wrong?
Well, because it's a human being, not just because it has consciousness or because it's of a certain age, because it's a human.
Because it's and what is it that...
I would argue against this point. Charlie might believe that life is precious and should be protected, but God in the Bible ordered the deaths of many women and children throughout history. I wonder if this applies to people that have received the death penalty too. I would be willing to bet that Charlie is okay with the death penalty and is fine with life being not sacred in that capacity. It's interesting how these positions can change. I'm not saying that you have to be pro-choice. You can be pro-life if you want to. I'm not going to sit here and debate that with you because I know that even though I have strong feelings about being pro-choice, I know that everybody on both sides wants what's best for everyone. And even though I think clearly that is pro-choice, you might be sitting here watching this going, no, it's clearly pro-life, and you've also really thought it through. And so this isn't to slam anyone's opinions, but it's really to just say, I don't think that Charlie believes this across the board. I think that if you want to be pro-life, you also have to support people after birth. You also have to support life in other contexts.
That gives human being this moral worth.
Not its consciousness necessarily.
I didn't say it's consciousness.
I know that I can imagine it because it is a human being because that has a soul.
And what is this soul? Where does this come from? This idea that it's...
Exactly. I mean, again, the Greeks postulated that it is the entirety of your being. Okay, you guys can laugh. I mean, it's true. I mean, every civilization has had a different belief, but agreed upon ethical monotheism, which is the creed of the West and what the birth certificate of my country articulates, is that every human being is more than just matter, it's more than just a clump of cells, but it also has an invisible element to you that will live beyond you.
Fine, so, I mean, can you say that comes from the Bible, or where else do you get that from?
Ethical monotheism, which is the creed of the West. And again, the Declaration of Independence mentions God 4 times. The founders were explicitly believed, not in a secular morality, but a divinely given one, of at least this idea that there is a God and you are not him.
Jordan Peterson does this too, and I don't know why they won't just come out and say it. The kid is asking, what about Christianity? Is that where this is coming from? Is that your basis for what a soul is? He refers to Greek mythology. He refers to a monotheistic Western culture. But the reality is that just means Christianity. I don't know why they always speak in riddles and just try to use the biggest words that they can. I think that the mark of somebody that is intelligent is somebody that can speak in terms that all of the viewers can understand and learn from, not just speaking to sound smart. I could word this and sound intelligent and make it really not that smart. He just is using big words to sound smart, but at the end of the day, the answer is yes, he is getting his definition of a soul from Christianity, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's a Christian. But I don't know why they fail to just say that. So something that irritates Christians too, it's clear that Charlie Kirk and people like Jordan Peterson, they want the benefits of being a Christian without actually coming out and saying they're a Christian, without having any backlash for actually holding those beliefs.
And let me ask you, what is the first stage of human development?
So this is the thing, right? We can take it from the sperm being generated in the father and the oocyte being generated in the mother, right? They fuse at conception, sorry. The only thing that happens at conception is these 2 cells fuse.
Right? No, DNA is created. A zygote.
DNA is not created.
No, that's not true. The DNA
Charlie.
DNA coding at the zygote. Hold on, time out.
Let me finish.
Does a zygote have a unique marker?
Charlie, DNA...
Does a zygote have a unique marker?
You have to let me speak. You have to...
But answer it, yes or no. Does a zygote have a unique marker?
Define a unique marker.
Meaning, can you differentiate the DNA coding between the mother and the zygote if you examine it under a deoxyribonucleic acid analysis? Can you?
Only purely because the addition comes from the father.
Oh, so it is something different.
Charlie, DNA is not created. DNA is not created. You have, the father has his own genome, the mother has her own genome. They fuse. This is why you have the same characteristics, similar ones to your mother, similar ones to your father. That's why you have similar characteristics to your siblings. DNA is not created, right? So when you ask me, where does a human being come from? I can say to you, it starts at conception, but all conception is these 2 cells joining, right? But these 2 cells were created, the mother's cells were created long before, they were created when she was a fetus.
I just want to show you guys this portion of the debate because I think it's really interesting. No matter where you stand on the abortion topic, I think this is really interesting, and I don't have much more to add. I think that the abortion topic has been discussed at great length, and again, I'm willing to say that I'm pro-choice, but I'm not here to change your opinion on that. I think that, you know, I have a lot of people that I love that are pro-life, and even though I am so pro-choice, I don't love that. I know that they also don't love that I am pro-choice, and so this is just really something that can be, you know, a jumping off point for a conversation in the comments. No matter what your opinion is, I would love to hear it in the comments, but I'm gonna let you guys just watch this without too much interjection from me because you already know my opinion.
So there's none of this DNA being produced, right? So we can't establish, the only thing that happens at conception is these these two cells fuse. Now, this idea that means that for some reason, suddenly that moral worth comes in, but it wasn't there before when you had these two cells who had half the DNA. But suddenly there's a
Correct.
switch.
Yes, something magical happens at that.
It's not magical, Charlie. We know about this.
Well, hold on.
Charlie.
Time out. Hold on.
Charlie, I promise you, I'm not trying to score points. I'm not trying to score points on you. This is genuine.
We call it the miracle of life for a reason. We've not been able to yet replicate human life development outside of the womb.
We call it the miracle of life because, yes, it's something beautiful, the ability to form a new...
Magical.
It's not... You say magical as in, oh, it's beautiful, it's an incredible thing that happens, of course. But it's not incredible in the sense we don't know what's going on. There's no new DNA coming out of nowhere.
Hold on, but time out. Isn't there a separate DNA, though, than the mother?
Yes, from the father.
Okay, but it's not the father's DNA either. A new coding is created.
Charlie,
you are a blend of the two. And so when did your life begin?
Okay, so
when did your life begin?
I mean, again, this comes from what you define as where life starts. You can say life starts at conception, but I'm telling you, I believe that's just an arbitrary point, right? That's just the moment these two cells fuse. Now, you say about this mother thing. So the way DNA is arranged in a cell is it's arranged in chromosomes. Chromosomes are paired up, so you have one from the mother, one from the father, typically, in a healthy individual, right? Now, you can take those maternal chromosomes out and you can find that this is who the person's mother is. And you can do the same with the father. Now, the reason you are different to your mother and father is because some of those chromosomes express genes that are different from each other. And so those genes interact and that's what gives rise to you, right? But there's no space for any kind of moral framework to come into that until you consider that a human being is capable of consciousness and of suffering. But if you take that out of the equation, the fact that these two DNA, whatever they call molecules, right? These two DNA molecules are fusing, that does not suddenly flip a switch that attributes moral worth to that individual. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to score points. I'm trying to understand.
By what moral standard do you believe that?
I believe that if an individual is capable of suffering, then it's wrong. Now, can I explain my opinion on abortion, just so you can understand? I would agree, as many reasonable people would, that at 9 months, it's unreasonable to expect someone to get an abortion, right? Unless you have some extreme circumstances. But for an elective abortion seems a bit radical to me. But it also seems radical to say that a woman who has just, the cells have just fused, to deny her of an abortion also seems wrong to me. Because that zygote is not capable of suffering, as far as we know.
Let me know what you guys thought about that. I thought it was really interesting, and I really liked the viewpoint of the student, obviously, because I'm coming from that perspective. But it was interesting to hear Charlie's argument on it too. I think that a lot of these points have been made, so I won't just repeat them here, but feel free to start that conversation in the comments. I'd love to join in and chat about it with you.
To meet you, Charlie. I hope you can understand first rule. I'm a little nervous. There's a very real chance I could wake up tomorrow, front page of YouTube. Charlie Kirk owns man bun idiot with facts and logic. So
destroys.
Yeah, destroys. Okay, so my question is, I agree that stable monogamous relationships often produce the best outcomes for society, but if that structure really works for everyone, why do we consistently see societies, once they become safer and more prosperous, move away from traditional monogamy? And why do so many marriages still end in divorce, even among people who generally try to make it work? And just one final framing there. If you believe in free markets because they are decentralized and they adapt to reality without top-down control, and given the individual ability to form healthy long-term pair bonds very significantly with factors like genetics and ecologically calibrated attachment styles, why do you reject top-down control in economics but not extend that same rejection to human behavior in terms of marriage?
Okay, so the first one, the second law of thermodynamics answers your question, is that it's the law of decay. Societies tend to decay against the roots that created them. For example, as a side note, here in this country, you guys invented the idea of free speech. You brought it to the world. You guys do not have free speech in this country anymore. 30 people a day are arrested in the UK for inflammatory social media posts. You're asking why do they get away from what works? Is that correct?
Yes. Well, why do societies make this change once they become more prosperous?
Oh yeah, okay. I mean, because prosperity leads to degeneracy.
That's just simply not true. I'm not sure what he means, I guess, by degeneracy for it to be true. But the truth is, in areas where there's a lot of poverty, the crime rates are higher. That's because people have less of access to resources. When people are thriving, when people are doing well economically, there is less degeneracy. I don't know if he means that people have more time to pursue things like romantic relationships that he might consider to be immoral. I don't know where he would be getting data on that about how when people get more money, they're more sexually active or something like that. The data clearly shows that in poverty, these issues like broken homes, addiction, mental illness, all of this is higher. And that's because of a lack of resources. It's not because of an issue with the people. It's because they don't have the resources that they so need. I wish there was some way to check their facts here, because to me, this is just another thing that Jordan Peterson also does really frequently. They'll say things, make these statements that sound really smart, like they're so confident, but when you actually think about it, it doesn't really make sense. Oh yeah, it's just because excess leads to degeneracy. What? No.
And so once you are prosperous, you tend to no longer have the moral guardrails or the limitations. Let's just say, you no longer have delayed gratification because you have instant gratification, because you have a surplus of goods, and then you have a decline of a transcendent moral order. The second part of the question, can you remind me, please, what the second question was? About markets?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, for example, I believe in intervention in markets if there is something that is improper morally. So, for example, I do not believe that you should be able to scam your neighbor or have misleading advertising, because I believe in a transcendent moral standard, and the same goes for my personal views on marriage.
Okay, so I think we largely agree on the foundation. I would like to propose something that you might like to think about. So, firstly, I absolutely acknowledge that, again, if everyone in society was able to maintain healthy long-term pair bonds, that would be best. Again, there's strong data showing that independent of socioeconomic factors, broken homes are some of the strongest predictors of poor life outcomes.
We totally agree.
Yes. And even, I'm not sure if many people here are aware of this, but if you track, as countries become more socially egalitarian, somewhat surprisingly, rates of female depression and anxiety also spike disproportionately. So I think one of the problems here is that when you try and impose moral absolutism.
For those of you who don't know, moral absolutism is the ethical view that certain actions are always right or wrong, regardless of the circumstances or the consequences. I'm reading this definition verbatim so that you guys know exactly what they're referring to here. It asserts that there are objective moral truths that apply universally to all people and in all situations. This would contrast with ideas like moral relativism, which would suggest that moral judgments are subjective and depend completely on the specific culture or context in which the things occur.
Inevitably, again, due to variance in attachment issues, due to industrialized culture, absent parents, screens, raising kids, around 50% of adults in the West develop attachment disorders, which make it very difficult to maintain long-term pair bonds. And then additionally, you have things like variation in oxytocin receptors, in density and shape, also in vasopressin. There are going to be, even if there's 5% of people who feel that these rules really do not fit them, they will push back. And this will create ideologies that then grow into more wider appealing ideologies, which then, leads to this change. I think this is what happened in the sexual revolution. It started with a push for female autonomy, and then it was almost morphed into a really exaggerated expression of pushing for maximizing individual freedom. And I think that when you try and impose moral absolutism this way, it just inevitably causes pushback. And I think if you were to, as someone with a platform, instead say, hey, monogamy is great, it works best for most people, but I also understand there are some people it doesn't work so well for, more people would hear the message that you want to push.
Okay, thank you for that. That's an interesting. I've actually never gotten that question before. It's very thoughtful.
Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but this student seems like he's just trying to teach Charlie empathy. He's like, have you considered just saying, yeah, this works for most people, but for some people it doesn't? And Charlie's like, yeah, huh? I haven't.
Would you say you're against moral absolutism then?
Yes, I would.
Are you against that absolutely?
No, I'm very open to having my mind changed, and
so it's not an absolute thing.
Well, I'm against moral absolutism.
Are you against moral absolutism? Absolutely.
No.
Okay, so then you're consistent. So
I think
it's all just kind of.
I think
it's preference, not It's about preference, then. You could just basically do whatever you prefer. There is no transcendent moral order.
Well, I think what you're doing there is slightly unfairly putting me into a loop, because I'm very open to having my mind changed.
No, that's
my
fine.
morals
What I'm saying, though, is that by definitionally, and this is something that will keep on coming back, you must choose what moral standard we live by. I'm very clear as to what moral standard. The lie of the West, of modernity, the last 30 years, is that we're going to have you live and let live, and there will be no moral standard. That itself is a moral standard, and it's a really bad one. And to your point, that yes, it creates more suffering, it creates more despair. And no, I disagree with what you say, and I respect the heart of which you're saying it. I will say that I have a moral obligation not to accommodate when people fall short, but instead try to lift them up towards the standard that is true and that I know that works.
So where I'd push this is I'd ask you, you describe people falling short when they fail to engage in long-term monogamy. What do you think causes that? Why do you think some people struggle?
Many reasons. Economic is one of them, but the biggest is the death of religion and the death of Christianity in the West.
Once again, this is just simply not true. I don't know where Charlie gets his stats, and I don't know why they just say things like this with such confidence, but there's no way for them to know that the reduction in Christianity is the cause of an increase in divorces. They could maybe say secular policies like allowing divorce at all, in which case, sure. The rise in divorce rate has a lot more to do with women being able to own a bank account now, being able to support themselves a lot more easily, being much more educated than ever before. It's just more realistic for women to leave now. It also leaves out a big chunk of Christians that have gotten a divorce. There are many Christians that have gotten divorces that they didn't want to get, but here they've gotten it, and comments like this are just not helpful. If you're out there and you've gotten a divorce and you love God, that doesn't make you less of a Christian.
As America, I'll just talk about America. The UK is unfortunately far less churched than America. But as America has become less churched, so many of these social ills rise.
So one thing I'd say, I study the evolution of behavior, in particular sexual romantic behavior. If you track all the different hunter-gatherer cultures that we can study, and we track how agriculture shapes things, you see that ecological conditions really reliably predict the prevalence of monogamy, certain marriage systems, and what I think is what we refer to as attachment issues. They seem to be an ecological calibration to an environment. In environments that are more unstable, it's less optimal for an individual to grow up with a tendency to rely on long-term pair bonds. And I think there's a mismatch with the modern world, again, coming back to industrialization. There are so many people who raise kids as absent parents. Daycare is massively linked to attachment issues. This then causes people to struggle to bond long term. And then again, coming back to the genetic part, there's again real research showing that especially vasopressin mutations and oxytocin mutations, some people really just do not have the proclivity for this.
What brings stability? Because you say stability is a good thing, and what would bring stability?
So first of all, I would say we had what you might consider stability in the previous century, and then it became unstable. And then things...
Why?
I'm saying because moral absolutism was imposed.
Moral absolutism was lost. You see, modernity rose. We started to teach our kids moral relativism, and we got rid of moral absolutes. So it's the opposite.
So why was it lost? Was it lost because people stopped pushing from top down?
Start bringing this question to a close.
Why was it lost? That's a question for far smarter minds. I can only tell you that it was. In America, it's honestly one of the worst decisions, not just worst ideas ever, which is modern feminism, largely from Betty Friedan's feminist mystique, which acted as if every woman who's in a monogamous marriage in the States is in some sort of tyrannical environment.
No one is saying that women in the US are just living in a tyrannical state inevitably. The truth is that the system has been set up against women. That's just the reality. I think we are coming closer to true equality, but we're not quite there yet. The stats show us, the studies show us that single women without children are the happiest women. This is because of the toll that women have to take on in today's society. Women have to help bring in 50% of the income. In a lot of cases, women are making more money than the men and are actually the primary breadwinners. On top of being the primary breadwinner or an equal partner that also works full-time, they're doing nearly all of the house cleaning and management. They're also doing all of the child rearing, all of the cooking, and everything else that comes with managing a household. This is the reason that people are upset, and you can't say that you haven't seen it. It's hard to not see, and frankly, I accepted a long time ago that if I couldn't find a man that was willing to step up and actually be an equal partner to me, then I wouldn't get married. And I know a lot of people whose partners do not step up and meet them 50-50. It is much more labor taken on by the woman. That's not even including the emotional labor in the relationship. This isn't anything against men at all, but this is just to point out that women aren't thriving in the US in marriages with children. They're struggling, and that doesn't mean that it's not worth it or that it's not valuable. I'm personally choosing to get married to a man, and I'm personally choosing to do that because I want to. I don't know if I'll ever have kids, but if I do decide to have children someday, it'll be because I want to do it, and my partner will help me equally. It hasn't always been a given in the past for women. For people that love to tout the male loneliness epidemic, which I completely agree is a real problem, they sure don't take anything that women have to say into account. Why are women unhappy? Have you ever asked that? Feminists are not saying that marriage and children is going to be the death of you. They're just saying that if you choose that, you should be supported equally. You shouldn't be taking on 90% of the load, and you should be able to choose it for yourself, just like men. I don't think that the people who have an issue with this, with being an equal parent and being an equal partner, if you have an issue with that, then you were never interested in being a parent to begin with. You were just interested in having a kid. You were never interested in being a spouse. You were just interested in being in a marriage. You were interested in the optics of it, in creating the life or hitting the milestone, but not in actually participating in it, because that's what it takes.
And it has led to the women of the West being the most miserable, most depressed, most suicidal, most prescription drug addicted cohort on the planet. And I think we need to appropriately challenge feminism and tell young women that it's okay, in fact, it's courageous to get married and have children again. I think it would solve a lot of our problems.
So I'm a feminist. My question is about the role of women, though. What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Well, thank you for that. Can I take it? I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
This is such a fake problem. People can definitely explain what a woman is. When we're talking biologically, when we're talking about sex, a woman, a female, it's a biological female. A woman is a biological female. But when you're talking about gender, it's something that can be socially experienced, and it's a word that can have two different applications. If you're talking about your sex, trans people accept, that's why they say assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth, or male to female or female to male. They understand better than anyone else the realities, the biological realities that they are confronted with. But gender is something else. Gender is how you experience it socially. So we can talk about this in a nuanced way. We can talk about womanhood in a nuanced way. Not every time you use a word does it have to mean the exact thing. Starting out the conversation with this just minimizes her conversation and does what some of the students have already pointed out, which is that he just fights culture wars and throws out these buzzwords. She's here to ask an intelligent question, and he's dumbing it down to be about something that he can clip really quickly on TikTok. It's kind of demeaning, and for someone that started out the debate with acting like the questions were beneath him, he sure is asking some pretty low questions himself.
Yes. An adult human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced. Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah, I was going to answer your question, but sure, go ahead.
Okay. So let's say you're a member of a tribe, and in that tribe, you have the biological female anatomy, and in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
So can a woman have a prostate?
Can a woman have a prostate? Biologically speaking, a woman is an adult human female that has a biological reality. but it's also social experience, right? So I don't...
Yeah, it's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
So as per my definition of woman, I would say that people who have a prostate are biologically male, but they can sometimes be socially treated as women.
Okay, got it. So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay. So you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
So, yes, yeah, men also experience harms from patriarchy, but I argue...
We're talking about the same feminism, though, just make sure. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, men also experience harm from patriarchal domination, but I would...
Doing this on camera is bad because I just cut my bangs even more. So if you started out this video being like, stop, it hasn't gotten better. Maybe it has gotten better. I don't know. Let me know. I'm gonna put the scissors down, and if you guys tell me to go to the hair salon, I'll go to the hair salon. I think it's pretty well known that feminism aims to empower both men and women. It's not man-hating. It's saying that men shouldn't have to be men and be too tough. Men should be able to express themselves. Men should be able to get help and seek help when they need it. Men should be able to cry and access the same resources that women have access to. I think that feminism is inherently pro-man. It's in the nature of feminism, and him coming at it from this angle just tells me that he doesn't really understand feminism, or if he thinks he does, he's just understanding a weird, like, Twitter angry version of feminism. Feminism at its core is about a better life for everyone. It's not about getting back at men or getting even. It's about creating a world where we help each other and support each other and treat each other equally. Whether you're gay or straight or cisgender or trans or anything else, feminism is for you.
Argue that those harms come from that system of domination itself. In the same way, for example, this isn't a threat, but if I reached across and punched you in the face, then my hand might hurt, right? So are we understanding that there are patterns of power? So I would also fight for the rights of men as a feminist, just as I would fight for the rights of women.
Sure. Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
I think I would have a few responses to that. I think that women report more stress and dissatisfaction today because, not because they have more rights or because of feminism, but because they're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations. So, for example, studies like the OECD's Better Life Index show women's life expectancy, education levels, professional achievements have risen in countries with higher gender inequality. So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
It's the whole thing of like, are people gayer now? No, people aren't gayer now. They're just able to come out of the closet now. They're able to talk about it now. Are women being sexually abused more than ever before? No, they're just talking about it more. There's just more ways to share experiences now and connect with each other. People are able to have access to stories like this, and it's been powerful. It has increased awareness, but not the prevalence of it.
That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny. No, hold on a second. Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
I think that encourages...
Forget complaining. Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
I think that even if both men and women have become unhappier, men's suicide rates have risen as well, and that's also been exponential. Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
Of course, obviously, but feminism is the glaring thing in front of us, where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up. And we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Brady Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control. And all of a sudden, women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. And I just have to ask the question, why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women that we should respect, and that deep down a lot of women want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it and we should support it, and we should say it means nothing if you're going to go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
Feminism doesn't reject this. Feminism says you should be able to choose. If you want to be a wife and a mother, and you want to stay at home, and you want to marry a man, and that's what you guys decide, There's nothing wrong with that. You should be able to choose to be a stay-at-home mom. You're not anti-feminist by being a stay-at-home mom. You're just being a woman and living out your life the way that you want to live. In the same way that feminism also would say, if you are a woman and you want to be a doctor and you want your husband to be a stay-at-home father and he wants to be a stay-at-home father, that there's nothing wrong with that either, that there's nothing emasculating about that, there's nothing wrong with that, that the woman isn't more uniquely designed to care for those children than the husband would be. That's the difference.
I think I would bring 2 points to that. The first one is just really simple, which is that you can ascribe liberalism all you want as the cause of the unhappiness. I would argue something else. I would say that it's certain economic policy that has very little to do with the social acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I would say that we can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth, monopolies increasingly become kind of emboldened to interfere with politics, and monopolies don't prioritize social health either. I think that those offer more compelling reasons for a decline in happiness than an increase in freedoms, because just one more thing, on an intuitive basis, generally speaking, people want more freedom, not less.
Okay, so if that's true, why is it, do you agree that the happiest women of the West are married with kids?
I would have to look into it, but
from my understanding, married women with children are definitely not the most happy group of women. My understanding is that the most happy group of women are single women without children.
I think there are certain
and objectively we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's like, it's a little bit of a one-liner. The happy and the grateful. The happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time.
And Jesus overthrew tables at the temple. Does that bother you? Just because people have an issue with something doesn't mean that they're deeply unhappy people who have a problem. There's probably actually some argument out there to make for people who engage in protests and engage with their communities are actually happier because they're more well-connected and are fighting for things that they believe in.
Of which we saw in our country all throughout a single summer. But as a side note, you would agree, objectively, study after study, survey after survey, that the women of the West that are married and have children, especially a lot of children, are far happier than even the ones that earn more money correlated at the same age.
So I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making. So I don't think smiles per capita is a particularly convincing way to measure whether or not we should encourage women to be autonomous. I think we should maximize agency within a fair system that has reasonable parameters because it's expedient, it's good for the economy, it's logical, it's the moral thing, because if we can't prove the material harms, we shouldn't discourage it. And also self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable. But so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure?
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
No, I mean, but seriously, like, but hold on. The women in the West have it the best in the world, and yet they're way unhappier than women of sub-Saharan Africa. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Because the women of sub-Saharan Africa have something that a lot of women in the West do not have. The women in the West have cats and they have good jobs, and the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine and they have kids.
This view of women, that women in the West just have cats in an apartment alone, that's not the case. There are arguments to make for women having life experiences and being financially stable and a little bit older when they first have kids. I don't know what this obsession is with making young wives who just stay at home. Your stay-at-home wife can go to sit in protests with the kids too. I think that the way that he talks about women shows just how 2D he really views them. Even men that have religious viewpoints or believe in these types of gender roles wouldn't talk about women this way. Tell me if you are someone that has viewed women or gender roles in this way, if you would agree with the way that he talks about women. I don't think that they would. He doesn't see women as full people with life experiences who might be having other things going on. He doesn't stop to ask himself, why are women unhappy? He doesn't actually care about those issues at all.
And maybe there's a biological undercurrent that is keeping a lot of women from realizing their full potential. And so without reading your phone and just connecting.
I'm not really reading my phone.
Well, it's fine. Sure, then you can answer without it. Fair enough. Would you agree that it's a good thing that more women get married and have children in the West?
I would ask you, would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both check the same answer?
No, again, so I fully, if you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. Like, I'm all for that.
Me too.
Okay, good. So we agree. That,
Absolutely,
we actually
we
have
agree on
agreement.
many things.
Then we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the UK either.
Hold on.
I would agree exactly with this point. Religious extremism is always bad, and I don't think that this should just only apply to religions outside of Christianity. If you go look at the Christian nationalism video that I made, this applies directly to the evangelical Christian church in the United States, and it is scary. I don't think that the correct Christian view is a nationalist one that's not backed up by the Bible or by the church as a whole. She makes a great point that if you have to apply this to one group of fundamentalist extremists, you should apply it to all of them across the board, and that does include the Christian extremists, even if it doesn't seem like they're extremists because they're the ones living in your country next to you.
So hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on. Can you show me what would your example, because I have 50, of a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women, right?
America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president. We had a female vice president, a female speaker of the House. Women earn more than men in America.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Did women get treated better in Rwanda?
Okay, I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of a side note, but you must be morally clear, because you brought up female genital mutilation, which is a teaching of the Islamic faith. But as a side note, like, again, this is very important, which is, I'm not here to require you to do anything or not. I'm making a simple observation, which is objectively true regardless. The women of the West are miserable, and they're miserable for a reason, because we've told them to suppress how they are made by God and pursue something else and get a bunch of trinkets and get a bunch of promotions, and they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable. And we should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies. Plaguing the West is we're not having enough kids. And it's not just bad because we won't have a future, it's also bad because the present is awfully miserable for too many women as well.
Okay, in which case I think we get...
Do I start bringing this to a close, please?
Okay, I think just one final thing, which is that in which case we get to a really interesting argument about what parts of womanhood can be demarcated to the social and what kinds of womanhood can be demarcated to biological. So, for example, my anatomy is demarcated to the biological, but the fact that I might potentially be a better nurturer than a man, I would demarcate that to the social, you might demarcate that to the biological, in which case we have differing moral scales of value. I would ask why we should necessarily prioritize your moral scale of value, which prioritizes things like the birth rate, when in actual fact there are various other moral scales of value. And if you yourself are a free market American, why is it the case that you would not, like the previous speaker noted,
I've already answered.
Extend personal freedoms towards all spheres, including a private sphere?
I believe in absolute truth claims, and it's absolutely wrong and bad when a society stops having kids to replace their own population. And then you have to import the third world, and you become the third world.
He really couldn't have thrown in, like, one nice thing about women to offset all of the hate. It feels like Charlie just wants to blame everything on women. Their unhappiness, the birth rate, all of it. And I think he should be asking himself why aren't women able to do this? And the reality isn't that women have been forced into the corporate world, haven't been forced into the work world. Feminism tried to give women the option, and then capitalism forced them to stay in the work world. It's not feminism that is saying you have to go work. It's just the world that we live in. You have to work. It is really difficult to live on a one-income household, and some of you might do it, and again, that's your option, and feminism brings that to you. I think that is really beautiful if you have the option, but the reason that women feel forced into the workplace isn't feminism, it's capitalism.
Good evening, Mr. Kirk. You've obviously devoted a lot of your life to electing, keeping in power Donald Trump, and you did so partly because you said Trump would put Americans first and take them out of foreign conflicts. Should we see how that is going at the moment? Currently, Trump has just accepted a $400 million debt from Qatar, which we're assured is perfectly above board. Billions in arms are going to Saudi Arabia, which they're using to bomb and starve Yemeni children. Not sure how that's in the interest of the United States, but it might be in the interest of the $5.5 billion deal his failed sons are receiving. At the same time, this great president of peace has greenlit mass killings not just in Yemen, but in Gaza, where he greenlit an invasion called Operation Gideon's Chariot, with the express aim of wiping out the Gazan population. You promised to put America first. Haven't you and your ilk sold America out?
No.
Well, I'm glad you have great intellectual substance and can answer. Because it's all the culture wars for you, isn't it? The second someone actually tells you what you're doing, which is bread.
Can you calm down a little bit? Like, just a little bit? You're pounding the table, you're all over the place. No. You want me to go piece by piece? Or would you like me to talk slower?
The student is passionate, but they weren't disrespectful in their question, and Charlie Kirk comes back being blatantly rude and disgruntled and attacking him personally, making fun of him and being really snarky and diva-ish almost. It's really embarrassing. A terrible look for America. I hate that he does this, and Jordan Peterson and others like them do it too. We're righteously indignant whenever someone doesn't act, speak, or behave in exactly the way they want towards them. You see time and time again that the conversations that go well are the ones where the person that they're debating with is constantly complimenting their intelligence and trying to stay pretty ingratiated with them.
I think you can...
Number one, Donald Trump is convening a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Joe Biden gave them armaments.
That's going well, isn't it?
It's going well. Can you not interrupt me? Well. I allowed you to talk uninterrupted.
You're famous for not interrupting.
I haven't interrupted a single person here today. Can I speak uninterrupted, actually? Okay. He is convening a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I believe we will see an end to that war. Number two, he's actually talking to Iran.
Is that a success, Mr. Kirk?
I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure.
Is that a success?
Well, again, these are ongoing negotiations, and it's a lot better than when your Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, went alongside our Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, to Istanbul and unnecessarily blew up a potential Russian peace deal, which has resulted in hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians, one of the great unnecessary wars of the modern era. Donald Trump believes in conversation and police through strength. He has been president for well over 120 to 130 days, and he has already ended a war between two nuclear conflicts of India-Pakistan. He has secured our own U.S. southern border while we were being invaded by foreign powers. And thirdly, he is brokering a potential settlement with Iran that will prevent a major escalation in the Middle East. And finally, it is very difficult, but I believe they'll get it done, that will finally see an end to the Russian-Ukrainian war.
I'm just going to disregard the enormous lies you just put out there about Russia and Ukraine. Okay. But do you really think leverage, negotiations work if you cut off all your leverage and scream at one party in the Oval Office? Don't you think that has just emboldened Russia? Because look at the approach. Putin thinks so much of your glorious president, he can't even be asked to show up. You have elected, or help elect, somebody who is at best an idiot and at worst is deeply corrupt.
Okay, again, so Trump and Putin had a 2-hour phone call today. You'll acknowledge that's a good thing. The pursuit of peace can sometimes be a winding road. Again, I'm not going to justify every military maneuver of a 100,000 person army. Instead, what I will do is I'll be clear that there is a good guy and there is a bad guy. I honestly...
Isn't that the morality of a child?
Well, hold on. It's interesting you say that, because a child who knows that Israel is the good guy, Hamas is bad, has a lot more wisdom than a student like yourself at Cambridge University.
Good one, Charlie. Whatever happened to turn the other cheek? That's not a good comeback. That's just a weird personal insult again. It's weird that we keep seeing this instead of people that are prepared to actually debate the issues. I would have loved to watch this and have actually learned something, anything from Charlie, but instead you just see him deploying the same tactics over and over again. And Charlie didn't include the ending on his channel. All of this footage was taken from his YouTube himself, but he left out this end clip that was so horrible to watch.
Damage to a country I'm sure we all deep down love.
The difference,
you will have to reckon with that.
Difference
Mr. Kirk.
is when... The difference is when we get our way, we'll still have a country, and your country will be a third world hellhole. Next question.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for today. Mr. Kirk has another engagement, so we're going to walk out of the chamber.
Questions with the students or no? I'm fine with it if you want. I don't care.
No, I think this is all we've got time for today.
You guys are easy.
So, what do you guys think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, especially if you watch the full interview by Charlie Kirk, or if you're more into politics than I am. I have my opinions and I do as much research as I can, but I'm always open to learning more, and I was hoping to learn more from this interview and I did from the students, but unfortunately I didn't learn very much from Charlie in this case. Thank you guys so much for liking my videos and all of your thoughtful comments. I really appreciate it. Please like this video and comment if you have anything to share. I respond to as many of you guys as I can, and please double check to make sure you are subscribed or subscribe to me. I would love to have you be along for the ride with me, and I've been having so much fun making these videos. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to have more conversations with you. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Young people are walking away from the church in droves, more than we've ever seen before, and they're not doing it because they were seduced by the world and they weren't strong enough Christians to resist temptation. Young people are walking away from the church because they think God hates them. And they're getting that idea from the church. People are walking away from the church because they were told as a child, Jesus loves you, and then when they came out to their dad, they got kicked out of the house and they were homeless for 6 months at 14. People are walking away from the church because they heard, Jesus loves you, and then when their boyfriend them, their church publicly blamed and shamed and ostracized them for it. People are walking away from the church because they were told Jesus loves you, and then their best friend died young in the process of deconstruction, and at the funeral they were told their best friend was in hell. These are 3 true stories of people whom I love, who I have received permission from to share their stories on the internet. True stories, and they're not unique. Since I have started talking about Jesus on my TikTok platform, thousands, truly thousands of similar comments and DMs I've received telling very similar stories, and some worse. People are not walking away from the church because they don't care enough about Jesus. People are walking away from the church because they heard the message of Jesus and they thought, wow, this radical gospel of love is the most important thing that could ever be true. And they looked around at the church and they said, that man is not here right now. He is not present in this place anymore. Nobody's doing the things that he's doing. Nobody's saying the things that he's saying. Thousands of children of God have been ripped out of his arms, brutally, claw marks left in their skin. And it wasn't by demons, it wasn't by the devil, it wasn't by the world. Those claw marks were left by Christians in the name of righteousness. That is horrifying. That is devastating. That should change your life. We are told in the Bible, they will know you by your love. They will know you by your love. They will know you by your love. They will know you are of God when you love like God. They will know you by your love. That's it. They won't know you by your correctness. They won't know you by your way that you can talk about the Bible. They won't know you by your ability to preach. They won't know you by your ability to be perfect. They won't know you by your legalism. They won't know you by your control. They won't know you by your authority. They won't know you by your church denomination number. They won't know you by your ability to call out sin in others. They won't know you by your way to be absolutely right in everything you say. They will know you by your love. That's it. That's it. The only possible way for the world to see God, the only way it ever can or ever will happen, is if Christians love the world radically, without restriction, without condition, without prerequisites, without limits, in a way that is countercultural, in a way that is counter-religious, in a way that exceeds expectation, in a way that has no strings attached, in the way that God does, in the way that Jesus modeled. Love God, love others. That's the most important commandment that we're given. They will know you by your love. And we wonder why people are walking away. And we wonder why Christian, the word, has such a negative connotation in the modern day. They don't know us by our love because we're not loving.